Well, good morning. It's the appointed hour. Quorum is present. We'll call to order the meeting of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board and start today by welcoming a new member. Dr. Gloria Griffin joins us today, and she comes from a very distinguished career in education, currently serving as the superintendent of the Millwood Public Schools. Great academic school and state champions in boys basketball. We're delighted to have you as a part of our group, and we welcome you, Dr. Griffin. You bet. Also wanted to take this opportunity to note for the record the wonderful service of Wayne Williams. And we're delighted with the great work that Wayne did for us, and we're sorry that he's had to step aside, but wanted to make sure that we sent to him, David and Mark, our good wishes for his continued good health and our thanks for his service to the city on the Citizens Advisory Board, and wondered if perhaps for the next meeting we might have a resolution of appreciation that we could forward to Wayne, and maybe Mark even invite him to be at the next meeting so that we might express to him in person our thanks for his great service to the city. With that, we'll move to item 2 on the agenda, the minutes of the February 28th meeting. Are there additions or corrections to the minutes? It's been moved. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The minutes are approved. And now, as always, we begin with good news. David, tell us about the revenue and expenditure report. Item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet the revenue and expense report for the period ending January 31st, 2013. It's in its usual form. We'll go over it briefly. For the month, the revenues of $8,961,221. Interest of $23,894 for a total of $8,985,115. For the fiscal year, $61,412,455. With the interest and other revenues, we have a total for the fiscal year to date of $61,998,891. So for the total program revenues, we have $262,797,482. with interest of $3,348,073, other revenues of $18,806 for a total of $266,164,360. On the expenditures, you can see the breakout for each of the programs. For the month, we have expenditures of $568,704. Fiscal year to date, we have $6,436,563. and expenditures for the program to date, $19,303,903.
Thank you. Dr. Griffin, we have the CFO of a public company who we just charged with the responsibility of looking over this carefully, and it's Michael Adams, seated a couple of people to your right. So I always ask him, how does this look to you, Mike?
I don't have any questions.
That's okay. Then we are to receive this report. Is there a motion to receive the report? It's been moved and seconded that we receive the revenue and expenditure report. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The report is received. That brings us to item number 4, a resolution. David, would you tell us about that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item 4 is resolution recommending City Council authorize the use of $350,000 of MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 2 funds for the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 1 Parking and Site Improvements Project M3-F001A. This is related to the next item, which is item 5, which is the parking improvements at the fairgrounds. The bid that we just received had 3 alternates in it. The bid came in so that we were under budget for everything except one of these alternates. The subcommittee felt like, because this paving, it's an additional paving is what it is, the subcommittee felt like, since it was going to more than likely be built with the Phase 2, which is the Expo Center, that we were getting better prices now, and that we should just take the money from Phase 2 and put it in this Phase 1 and use it to award the entire project.
Thank you, David. Bob, you want to give us your thoughts about this?
Well, there's been a strong consensus among the committee members as we started talking about the paving aspect of Phase 1, that if at all possible, we would like to do not only the base, which is about, I recall, 1,600 parking spaces. There were two alternatives or three alternatives beyond that that would get us total parking of about 2,500 parking spaces, which was the preferred number for the size of events that would go on there. And Tim O'Toole was an early and strong advocate for trying to do all those alternatives if at all possible. We didn't know whether that would be feasible until the bids came in and saw where those bids were. And it looked as if, given the low bid, we could do all but one alternative within the current budget. And the committee was unanimous in its view that at this stage of the fairgrounds project, it would make sense to move a little bit of money from the Expo Center Phase 2, put it over on the parking side so that we could do all three alternatives at one time, less expense now than what it would incur if we did it 2, 3, 5 years from now. And certainly as a matter of convenience, it works a lot better to do it now. Our sense was that and I believe the number we got from David yesterday was that to do all three alternatives would put us about $319,000 or $320,000 over the budget for Phase 1. And so we opted to recommend moving $350,000, allowing a little bit of a contingency in there from Phase 2 to Phase 1. That represents less than 1% of the amount of Phase 2 project cost. And we figured that through design between now and the time that the Expo Center is built, that can be accommodated and would allow us to move ahead with a full parking project right now.
Two questions I want to mention because I think these were discussed and get Bob's and David's reaction as well. One is this would be, I think, the first time that we have taken money from a Phase 2 in any for any subcommittee project and moved it forward, and we might be asked to do that a good number of times on all 8 projects. So I think that this will be the first time that we've been asked to do this, so it's not just an inconsequential decision we're making. And then secondly, I guess we'd all want to know, Bob, and you may have already addressed this, but it's the feeling of the subcommittee that this would not have any impact on Phase 2, the building of the Exposition Center, if we did this. Is that what I understood you to say?
Well, it's a bit of a crystal ball. I'm not sure that it's accurate to say it would have no impact on the Expo Center because you're moving, $350,000 away from that project. But that project is in the very, very early design stage with the architects and engineers. And it was the sense of the committee that there was lots of wiggle room, if you will, in terms of the design of the Expo Center, that it will not significantly impact the design or work to the detriment of the second phase of the project to move that money over now. And we have a great deal of latitude as we move into later stages of the design to accommodate any decrease in budgeted revenue for the Expo.
Okay. You wanted to add to that, David?
Well, I just want to echo what Bob said. I think that the thought was that this paving that would be advantageous for the overall Expo Center would probably have been included in the Expo part of it, the Phase 2 project. So the subcommittee felt like not only were they getting a better deal because of inflation, but also mobilization costs and those kind of things. While the paver is out there, you can just do the entire project.
Yeah, my question for you, David, is if you go to every subcommittee meeting all of them have something they would rather do sooner than later. And all of them can make the case that it is cheaper to do it earlier than it is later. And as we do this, I want us to do it with a view that we may hear 8 more of these. And I just want us to think carefully through that. And I have perfect confidence in the subcommittee, but this is something that we have not done. And I just want everybody to be aware of that. And anyone else have any questions about it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me just add to that a footnote. I don't know that the subcommittee had any particular sense that this would be precedent setting. We were looking at it,
Sure.
Just in terms of the fairgrounds project, and we didn't discuss whether, from a precedent standpoint, it was wise or ill-advised to do this.
Well, okay. Anyone else want to be heard about this?
I just had a question, I guess, from a procedural standpoint. What we're saying is I guess the project budgets have been approved by council, and so to move money from one phase to another has to go through the council as well. Is that what's going on here?
Well, yeah, ultimately, the contract has to be approved, and budgetary-wise, it will go to council for their ultimate approval. I think the thinking of this that makes it maybe a little different than some of the others is that it is associated with this Phase 2. It isn't a separate piece of a project. So that was the thinking of the subcommittee.
I wanted to share with you, too, I asked Amanda this question as to whether or not this would require an amendment to the implementation plan and budget, or whether we can do it without reopening the whole issue of the budget and the implementation plan. And Amanda, you want to share with us your thoughts about that?
Sure. This is just specific to this project, specifically these 2 phases of the fairgrounds project. So this isn't an amendment to the entire implementation plan. It's just as to this particular project. And Mr. Adams, like you were describing, for instance, on the river with the windscreen and the starting gates, those are all part of the first phase. So there's not a requirement to go and change the phase project budget. But in this situation, they're looking at 2 different phases and moving money from one phase to another. Right. So that's why City Council would need to approve this.
This question is, the answer is probably obvious, but the council will, other than just kind of procedurally approving, they will understand the issue will be set forth about perhaps precedent, using your language, Tom, precedent setting. I would hope that that would be the case.
Sure. I don't want to overemphasize the precedent setting, because everything we do in some way is precedent setting, because we haven't done these things before. I just wanted us to understand and to carefully think about this as just a little bit different than just, gee, let's move money from pocket A to pocket B, because I think we will see this same issue, and I'm persuaded by what the subcommittee and David has said about it, that it is advancing something that would have been in Phase 2 anyway, and so they're not asking to increase the budget or to change what they're spending. So, but I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear what we were being asked to do here. And so with that, if there's are there any other comments, David?
Well, only other thing I was going to say is Phase 2 for the fairgrounds is very soon. It's within a year of going out for bid, so it's not like it's 2017 or 2018, something like that.
Yes, Dee?
I would like to say on the subcommittee, we feel strongly about parking, and that was an issue that was brought up. And we also decided at the meeting that this represented 1% of our budget, just to kind of put it in perspective.
Sure.
So.
All right, then. Is there further discussion? Do we have a motion? Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. The resolution is adopted. That brings us to item 5, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5 is recommend resolution ratifying the issuance of and approving addenda numbers 1 and 2 for MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 1, Project 2 parking lot improvements, awarding contract base bid plus alternate numbers 1, 2, and 3 to Bishop Paving Company Incorporated in the amount of $3,807,151, and approving contract and bonds Project M3-F001A. As I said before, this is the project we just briefly discussed. This is Phase B of Phase 1 at the fairgrounds. We broke out the grading. We got that done beforehand. The grading is nearly complete, and so we're ready for the parking. And as Mr. Nealon said, that this is about 2,200 spaces out there that will not only be used for the carnival area that will be relocated, but also whenever the fair is not there, it'll be parking for the new expo center and parking for events out there at the park, at the fairgrounds.
All right. Any comments on this, Bob or Dee?
No, I think it's straightforward. It's a necessary adjunct to what we've just done. It's the low bid and
Okay.
ready to move forward.
All right, is there a motion?
I have a
Sorry,
question.
Mike.
David, this bid is $3.8 million, and I think the grading earlier was $600,000 or so that's at $4.2 million, and Phase 1 project budget's $4.7 million. So is there something else in Phase 1 yet to come? I mean, why are we short? Why are we having to move money if we're within the $4.7 million?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. There's contingency on that previous project that maybe could also be used. I don't know that answer. I can find that out.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, is there a motion? Been moved and seconded that we approve the recommended resolution. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is approved. Boy, a lot of fairgrounds business today, David. Take us through number 6.
Item 6, pardon me, is recommend resolution approving change order number 2 and amendment number 2 for MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 1 improvements, preliminary site grading, decrease of $12,365, project M3-F001. This is the grading project that I just spoke about. As you go along with the project, some things come up, and one of the things that was discovered as we were doing the grading out there was a sanitary sewer that serves the fairgrounds. It's essentially a private sewer. It went through the old grandstand area, and it goes through the parking area that we're talking about now. We're also connecting to it with the sanitary sewer that we're doing for the carnival area. It was discovered that this sanitary sewer was clogged, or it wasn't functioning. Ran a camera up into it and found out that it was actually collapsed. It was an old clay line. We don't use clay pipe any longer, so it's probably 50 years old at least. It had collapsed, so you don't want to build new paving on top of a potentially line that's going to collapse. So this change order is to replace that sanitary sewer with new line. Also, the amendment in there is to decrease quantities that weren't used. There was some fencing and there was some temporary seating. Because this paving is coming up so soon after the grading is going to be complete, we don't need to do the temporary seating and stabilization of the soil that we had previously planned, so there's some credits there.
Questions or comments? Bob?
Just this was discussed early at the committee yesterday. We're one of those good news, bad news. The bad news was the sewer thing. We did the colonoscopy on the sewer and found the problem and got it taken care of, which cost a little bit extra, but we are enjoying some substantial savings on fencing. The way the displacement pond has been constructed, and to accommodate some utility lines that are there, the berm is actually higher than originally planned, and the engineers were of a view that we didn't need the fencing where that berm is. We save about, I don't call the number, $47,000, something like that, in fencing that we don't need. So we're enjoying some savings on the good side, and these changes heavily reflect the reality of moving forward with the project.
Further comments or questions? Shall we approve it? Is there a second? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution before you. As many as favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. Item 7, David, as we move to the river, huh?
Yes, sir. Recommend resolution accepting the MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 2 Improvements Race Course Starting System Project M3-R003. This is the starting systems that we purchased for the river race course. It's been complete, and we're ready to final accept it.
Very good. Dee, any comments from the committee, or Mike? Anything else? All right. Shall we approve it?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the draft final plans for the race course starting system. Pretty exciting, huh? As many as favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is approved. Thank you. Item 8.
Mr. Chairman, item 8 is recommend approval of the draft final plans and specifications for the MAPS 3 Phase 1 Project 1 Sidewalk Improvements Project M3-W001. This is the first part of Phase 1. I want to make clear that this isn't all of Phase 1, but we were able to expedite this. It's listed as draft because we are still going through the procedures for review within Public Works and the various departments within the city. But the changes should be minimal. And as soon as that is completed, we want to move it on to City Council, but we don't want to delay it a month just through procedure. We have Carl Ballesweiler here today with Smith Roberts Ballesweiler. We'd like to invite up to talk about the project.
Welcome.
Good morning. We're excited to be here to bring you our final plans for our first project to hopefully expedite this and get it on the street so we can move on to the other ones. Craig Wallace with our firm is going to make a brief presentation on these final plans.
Thank you. Good morning.
Chairman and Board. This is a follow-up. I know last month we brought a presentation for preliminary plans that were submitted. We've been busy in the office to get these final plans ready, so like Carl said, we can get them on the street for construction. It's the first 6 miles of this project. Are we working? Okay, there we go. This is just the cover sheet of the final plans. It shows a project site within the city limits. These are the alignments. There are 7 total alignments with this project 1, phase 1. This is a map that's probably familiar because it had other alignments on it, but these are the 7 alignments that will be part of this project 1. There are several things with the final plans that we had to consider. Special design issues. One of them is considering the intersections and how to get across those, as well as upgrades to the facilities at those intersections. We do have plans that show that process. Other special design considerations include some of the existing structures there that will have to be crossed. Shows existing sidewalk structure that is obviously not acceptable for the purpose, so that'll have to be replaced, as well as handling it with the driveways behind the driveways. Another consideration, different flumes and drainage structures that come out of the businesses and parking areas that will have to be crossed as well. We have several different special design features in the project that obviously are part of these final plans. Connection to transit was one of the criteria that was looked at when we identified the alignments, and so, considering that along with the entire transit routes and how that ties to each alignment. These are the final plans for MAPS 3, Phase 1, Project 1, sidewalk improvement projects. That does get a little complicated in saying that, but we do want to make sure, as Mr. Todd said earlier, was that this is the first project. This is going to tell us a lot once it does get on the street. It's approximately 6 miles of sidewalk, and actually the estimated construction cost about $1.4 million. In doing a rough estimate on our final plans earlier this morning, it appears that we'll probably be a little bit below that. And then, I'm sorry, the schedule. We anticipate that the plans will be turned in to the MAPS office sometime tomorrow or early next week.
Are there questions? Kim?
My question was, I didn't see this expanded version in our packet last night, so I'm glad to have this information this morning, but it appears that the cost per mile is $243,000, roughly. Is that average, above average, comparable to other city projects?
I think that looking at that per mile, which I know that that's what you have to look at as projects come forward, but with those special design features, we have some miles, that are going to be less than that, some others. These particular ones we had 2 or 3 miles that had some special consideration on that, but I would anticipate that it probably won't be that high depending on what the special considerations are.
When we turned in the preliminary report, we talked about our estimate, which was right at this 1.4 million, which is just under $50 a linear foot. And we had talked earlier about our range, based on previous projects, would be between $35 and $50 a linear foot. So we expect this, cost to come down after we open bids.
Based on those special considerations?
And based on past bids. This is a conservative, the average unit prices that we saw in the prior projects is what we applied to this estimate. But the low bid was, like $35 a linear foot, where this is based on average bids of like $48 a linear foot.
Thank you.
Just one question for me. Taking into account that probably every citizen in every ward would like to have theirs first, may we assume that these projects are conform to the list of priorities, they're in accordance with the master plan that's been designed, and that they're chosen because of that priority, and the proximity has something to do with the efficiency of getting the work done?
Yes, these are the top priorities based on the master plan, and we're grouping the projects based on geography and location within the city limits to try to minimize the cost.
Thank you.
Dr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Is it possible that, for my application, get a list of that phases that you are in the areas of Oklahoma City that this sidewalks are based on?
We can get you a copy of the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Appreciate it. We have the recommendation in front of us. Further questions? Shall we approve it?
My only question would be how the subcommittee felt about this as this went through their...
Yes. Let's see. I attended the subcommittee meeting, but I'll let David.
It was approved unanimously and well received. The things that they're talking about, grouping it was all acceptable. They were fine.
Yes, Sue is absent today, but she was there, and I was too, and it was well received by the subcommittee. And I think this comes forward with their blessing. Shall we approve it? It's been moved that we approve it. Is there a second? Moved and seconded that we approve the resolution. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. David?
Item 9 is recommend resolution ratifying and approving addenda numbers 1 and 2 for MAPS 3 Downtown Public Park, Upper Park Demolition Package 2, awarding contract to Midwest Wrecking in the amount of $54,940, and approving contract and bonds project M3-P007. This is a demolition contract for the block that is immediately north of the Skydance Bridge between Harvey and Robinson. There's 2 medium-sized structures, and then there's several small structures, and this package will remove those structures. It will remove fences, it will remove lighting, and it will remove those trees that were designated in the tree study to be insufficient, diseased, and damaged beyond keeping. It also includes one of the buildings in the north block, it's known as the Countertops by Tom building. So it's technically the second building demolition package, but other than the post office, it's the first one.
Kimberly, any comments from the subcommittee, or Mike?
This was an item of discussion yesterday, and certainly we were excited to hear that the nice trees that we want to remain are going to be distinguished from all the others so that we don't have any problems there. And we're very grateful for the amount of work that Midwest Wrecking gets in the city so that their prices can be very competitive, and we all benefit from that.
Great.
Everybody was in concurrence.
So the subcommittee recommends this.
We didn't have
Yes.
a quorum yesterday,
Yeah.
but in our discussion, everyone was in favor of it.
Great. Further questions? Bob?
I'm just curious, the bid was just slightly more than half of the estimate. Was there some change in what was being done, or how are we enjoying such savings?
As a matter of fact, many contracts that the city sees from Midwest Wrecking fall in the same kind of percentage. I asked about it yesterday, just as a matter of record, and because of the amount of work that they do, they are extremely efficient and very competitive, so, and a great track record. So, again, we benefit from their work.
All right, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommended resolution. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Item 10. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 10 is recommend resolution approving final specifications for MAPS 3 Downtown Public Park Demolition Bidding Package 3 and authorizing the city clerk to advertise for bids, project M3-P010. Continue with demolition. This would be the next block to the north of what we just talked about. There's several buildings in this block, but again, the structures will be removed, the fences, the lighting, and any trees that were designated not to be saved.
Any comment from the subcommittee? Mike?
Well, just a question in general. When you say, David, that trees that have been designated for whatever reason to be removed, I'm just curious, do you happen to know, and maybe you can't answer this, but what does the city do, how prompt is the city in doing the same kind of evaluation of trees on other property that the city owns? And do you see what I'm getting at in terms of, are we making a special effort to do this?
Well,
public park?
One of the concerns with the park subcommittees, was that we didn't just go in and carte blanche take all the trees out. So we did the study to determine what trees were viable and worth saving. I'm sure that the Parks Department does work with their trees on other parks and various facilities. I don't know what that is, but that's how we got to where we are on our park.
Well, could you perhaps talk to Wendell or someone from Parks, and I just kind of have a general, to see if we're using the same kind of process in the same kind of timely manner. And you know why I'm asking that, I know, so that would be just helpful information for me in the future.
We can do that.
Thanks.
All right. We have before us the resolution. Are there further comments or questions? It's been moved that we approve it. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. David, do you have any specific items under item 11?
No, sir, we do not.
That brings us to the Citizens Advisory Board subcommittee reports. Are there any? I know that we have meetings. Nathaniel, let's start with you. Anything from the Transit Subcommittee you want to inform us about today?
Sure. We, a little too close. We had a good discussion yesterday. Didn't have any items to vote on, but just to kind of update, we heard from Rick Gustafson, who was very involved in the Portland streetcar, and that triggered a good discussion about how criteria and how the values of the community shape that criteria for what you want to do, and a pretty good consensus among us, but also in discussions and forums that Jacobs has hosted. That city serving is what we're calling it. That's basically where the number one value is getting people to things where there's already a lot of development there, as opposed to an area where you want to where there is no development, but you want to create it. So there's that kind of critical mass of development that benefits from serving, getting people there. but also tying into other modes of transportation that was stressed by a lot of our members. And so, while not under the purview of the streetcar subcommittee, we're very mindful of the Nelson Nygaard study on the bus system and have encouraged the city to, ensure parallel planning between what we're doing and what the bus system is doing. So as they improve that, make sure that it ties in well with the streetcar. And then just stress the kind of educational process of not only citizens, but, developers as well, and how this first element of the streetcar, when people see it and the benefit of it, knowing that it's just the beginning, and it'll be not only just other elements of the streetcar developed over time, but also other modes, and how this very iterative process of seeing the benefit and then coming up with even more ideas on how you can extend the reach or get buy-in from other parties continues. And that's probably the highlights from our discussion yesterday.
Thank you. I know we've heard from a good number of the other subcommittees. Anyone have anything to add from their subcommittee? Mike?
Yeah, I just would like to say what a loss the Senior Health and Wellness Center subcommittee. We had Zora Brown, who is on that committee, or was on that committee, succumbed to cancer. She was such a bright and classy lady. She added so much to the subcommittee, and she fought the good fight, and she will really, really, really be missed on our subcommittee. I also would like to say that we did not meet last month for the same reason we did not meet the previous month, and that is April 2nd, I guess, is the big date that we expect that we will have hopefully a whole stack of RFPs for operating partners for the first wellness center, and so we're anxiously all awaiting that date. And then finally, some of us were able to attend. David, Mike Mize, and I was able to attend, and our senior consultants. This was actually a pretty unique opportunity. The Partners for Livable Communities, which is a nonprofit organization out of D.C., for some years has partnered with the MetLife Foundation, a national foundation, and what they do is bring folks together for annually for something called the City Leaders Institute. And apparently cities compete to be able to attend this institute, and because of the work, frankly, of our mayor, our mayor who has done so much to lead our city through maps and other just wonderful, amazing things. We all know how Oklahoma City is ranked in so many rankings, from quality of life to economic development. We were the only city that was actually asked to participate this year, and that was quite a feather, I think, in the city's cap. And so David and Mike Mize and I was able to attend, along with our senior wellness, this year's City Leaders Institute. And why we were there is for a program to look at how to integrate arts and cultural programs in senior wellness centers. I'll let David speak a little bit more if he'd like to say a few words about what we learned. Because of the weather, some of us were not able to make it for the first day. I say some of us. I wasn't able to make it for the first day with flight cancellations and what have you. The weather in D.C., not the weather here. But in any event, I did finally make it, and for the time I was there, it was very, very helpful and rewarding, and I came back with some pretty concrete ideas to think about ways and other organizations that we will be contacting to learn about how we may get some other kind of help and support, and again, integrating cultural and art programs within our senior wellness centers.
It was very enlightening, and it gives us a good starting point to begin with what Mr. Dover said, and I think that the Institute was intrigued with what we are doing here. They're very impressed with what Oklahoma City is doing and what the MAPS 3 programs are doing. So it was a great program. It's, like I said, just a start, and as we move along with the operating partner, we'll know more about what we can do with that program.
Good.
One other thought I forgot, David. The other thing that comes with the program is they hook us, the Oklahoma City, up for a year with an expert as a consultant in this area. And so Mike Mize will be our contact person here in the city, working with this expert out of D.C. that will, again, be that person, go-to person to talk with about ideas and how to pursue organizations and programs that will just make this a wonderful fit. And by the way, it was paid for. We didn't, the city or MAPS, no funds were used. It was all paid for by the MetLife Foundation.
Great. Anyone else from the subcommittee? Dee?
Yes, I'd just like to say that the river's certainly been in the news. I don't know, we discussed American Idol, really featured it. It was probably even more important than some of the singers. And it was also on NBC News last week, too, so I just wanted to point that out. We're certainly getting attention.
Yeah, great job. I'll mention that this, on behalf of the Convention Center Subcommittee, I'll just say this has been a big week for us. Populous, our consultant from out of town, has been here, conducted a good number of private meetings culminating in a presentation to the Convention Center Subcommittee yesterday. You undoubtedly have seen in the media the things that they presented, but I'm going to leave it to David to give you the details in his report. But I will say that we were all encouraged. They presented 3 options, 2 of which would provide space on the site itself for a convention center hotel, which is not a part of MAPS, but is part of our charge to find a spot that would accommodate that, and 1 option that would not. We learned that they believe we can do this within the budget we have, which was very encouraging. And they also suggested that we have a site that is large enough to accommodate what we need to do. And those things were all worrisome, that we might have to acquire more land or whether or not we'd have room on the site that's been selected. So all of those things, I think, were pretty encouraging. And all of the plans provide for large exhibit hall space, lots of meeting rooms, and each one of them provided for a beautiful ballroom on whatever the top floor turns out to be that would have a spectacular view of our city. And I'll just say it was a pretty upbeat meeting, although there's still lots to be decided, some very significant decisions ahead of us. And so we don't have the final design by any means, but we have some of the questions that we've been wrestling with have been answered. And so I think we all felt as though we're continuing to make progress, but we've still got a ways to go. Then let's move on to, if there's nothing else from the subcommittees, let's move on to item 13, informational items, the acquisition status map. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet the status of the acquisition for the Parks property. The dark blue properties are the properties that we have acquired. The lighter blue, as we've said before, are owned by ODOT right now. There's an agreement that we will exchange ownership in that soon. And then up at the northeast corner, there's 2 parcels that are in litigation right now. So we continue to try and get this wrapped up, but it's just going to take a little bit more time.
Any questions about the property acquisition? Well, then let's go to item B, where we're being asked to approve a resolution that would pay the award that's been made in the district court. Would you want to explain that for us, David?
Yeah, actually, Mr. Chairman, this is just an informational item. This is the resolution for the payment of the land that's in litigation. It's already gone to council. It's already been done, so it just comes to you as an information.
Oh, great. All right. That brings us then, any questions about any of that? Comments? Then let's move to item 14. David, I'm particularly interested in you adding your comments about what's going on at the convention center to what's already been said. I know that in your report. Would you do that?
We can just start there with the convention center. As you said, the conceptual design was presented this month to the subcommittee, and they've met with a lot of the stakeholders and users groups. Really what they were looking for this month was information and feedback with what they presented, and I think that was certainly obtained. And
That's an understatement.
they will go back with that information and continue to refine their designs, and in the next few weeks bring it back to us and ultimately a final design. So it's still a design process, somewhat of an iterative process that as much as we would like to get to a solution, we just, need to go through this process.
Sure.
So I'll move on to the river. The race course lighting continues under construction. A windscreen project is in design, and the Phase 2 improvements are in design. On senior wellness, as Mr. Dover mentioned, the revised RFP is on the street, and proposals are due back on April the 2nd. Trails and sidewalks, the Phase 1 sidewalks, as you saw today, are in design, and you approved that first section of Phase 1. The remaining sections will be forthcoming. And 2 sections of the river trails are in design. They are very much complete right now. We are waiting on right-of-way acquisition for the trail that we have, the 2 sections along the river. Fairgrounds, as I previously mentioned, the Phase 1 grading is nearing completion. It's substantially complete right now, and the Phase 1 improvements were approved today. The Expo Center, which is a very exciting project at the Fairgrounds, is currently in design, and they're having those meetings much like we have with the park or with the convention center, with the stakeholders and user groups. So that design continues. Transit, as Mr. Harding said, work on analysis of the line is underway, and analysis of the Adventure line is underway, and the purchase of the Santa Fe station continues. The park, the master plan design continues, and within a few weeks we'll have that final master plan. They continue to refine their master plan and meet with additional groups that might have more input with stakeholders and user groups. As I previously stated, there's been several public meetings, and as you just saw, the land acquisition continues. I'd like to mention also that we had our 3rd coordination meeting with all the consultants last week. It was very successful, and that's moving along quite well.
I want to congratulate you and our consultants for doing a great job of coordinating those meetings among all of the various consultants that we have working on this. If we receive compliments for anything that's going on, it's that everybody's communicating, and that's a tribute to what you all are doing, and I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job. Anything else, David?
That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We are, don't want to rush anybody, but we are told that there's another meeting scheduled to start here at 11 o'clock, and we're doing well. We do want to give a chance for any more comments by the board. Anyone have anything else?
I'll just mention one thing. And we brought up last meeting, I think the subcommittee is reviewing the progress of their projects and on a periodic basis, and the minutes reflected that, but it talked, primarily about budget. And I think we also need to be monitoring the timeline on the projects. And so if anybody has issues, I think that are, phases are not progressing as scheduled or something, that's something I think we should be monitoring as well. It's not just the numbers.
We do constantly monitor that. Right now, the Wellness Center is behind, but that's mostly because of the operating partner. And I think the idea has always been that we want to get it right, and we want to make this thing right instead of pushing it on. But there's opportunities for us to catch up on the wellness centers.
I was just thinking, if the subcommittees come back with those various reports, it shouldn't just be, I'm the numbers guy, it shouldn't just be the numbers, but also should be looking at the timeline as well. So
I agree, Mike, and it was in the minutes, and we have discussed how we should review that periodically, whether that should be done quarterly. Certainly it doesn't need to be done monthly, or whether it should be done annually. Had an opportunity to talk to the mayor about that. He really liked your idea as well. So we'll set up a process to periodically review how we're making progress on the implementation plan as well as the budget. And we'll need to allot time on our agenda to do that. But that's a work in progress, and we will definitely get that done. It's a good idea. Any other comments? Kim?
I do. As we always have regularly recognized all the MAP staff and all the hard work they do, I'd like to recognize our Assistant Program Director, Lance Musgrave, who came up with an ingenious idea, I think, for some of the goings-on in the park. As we know, there are a lot of abandoned buildings, some of them which we know will definitely at this point be demolished. And as a former Oklahoma City fireman, Lance came up with the idea that we work with the fire department to see if there's any training. Well, I'm sorry, were you not a fireman? I know there's an alliance with you in the fire department somewhere. Okay. Anyway,
he was a Boy Scout.
he had an idea that we talk to the fire department to see if they could use any of those buildings for a training exercise, and the possibility that that will happen in the very near future is imminent, and I think that's an excellent use of thought time and thinking out of the box. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything else from staff?
No, sir.
This is an opportunity that we have for citizens who want to make a statement or have questions. Is there anyone here that would like to do that? Here's a good friend from yesterday's transit meeting. Would you step forward and identify yourself?
I'm Dina Madole. I have owned the property at Northwest 14th and Robinson for 40 years now, I realized. So that's longer than many of you have been alive, I guess.
Not me.
Okay. I have never really understood if a fixed rail transit system was a condition of the MAPS program, or was it just a transit system that could be a bus? Can you tell me?
Nathaniel, you want to answer a question?
Sure. So obviously the language of the MAPS proposal was very general. I mean, if you read the actual ballot, it just says we're going to do a thing called MAPS where we're going to raise this much money through a 1% sales tax. So it's left to how it was proposed and material that was circulated throughout the city. And so certainly the material that was circulated showed a streetcar. And a very brief history of that was the fixed guideway study in 2005 discussed all the different modes of transportation that need to be in Oklahoma City. And then an early version of the alternatives analysis looked at all different modes and which one should be started first. And then one of the concepts that was fleshed out was that certainly, bus system needs to be improved, but also different modes. And among the different modes, streetcar was one of them that needs to be among the first, along with bus being improved. And now the streetcar is very capital intensive, so MAPS money is great for capital intensive projects, and so I think that's why that was paired together. Whereas bus system improvements, different forms of money would be well suited for that. And I hope to see from Nelson Nygaard's study what ideas might come out of that, and you might see other discussions in City Council on how they would pursue that. But that's kind of the 30-second history of how that got there.
Okay. I know you need to move on here, but...
We've got time for you, please.
Okay, thank you. The problem that I am having with the fixed rail situation is that once it's there, it's there. And if we don't like it and don't want it anymore, too bad. It seems to me an extraordinary amount of money to replace all of the utilities on the current preferred route. I don't know that that's a good expenditure of taxpayer money. I also have a problem with the preferred route, which starts, from my point of view, at 13th and Dewey, will go down Broadway, east on Broadway, south on Robinson, as I understand it, to 11th or 12th, east again to Broadway, south to Broadway, on down to Bricktown and the convention centers in the park and around, okay? At 13th and Dewey, I don't understand why. What's there? I understand that it's a possible connection eventually with Classen routes. I understand that it's a wide street to go down. But from what I got yesterday, and all of this for a layperson is really a lot of stuff to try and understand, but the push for business development seems to be key, and I do understand that. but at the price of what? Nobody is talking about what we need or should save. And I think that area, if this fixed line goes down 13th Street, that area, including Heritage Hills, East Heritage Hills, and eventually Mesta Park, is going to be inundated with traffic problems. There's a lot of traffic on 13th going east and west. You may not notice it quite in the middle of the day, but you will on the rush hours. So if traffic is reduced to one lane going each way, where are the other people going to go? And I'm guessing they'll go down 14th Street, through Heritage Hills, winding through Mesta Park perhaps, to get over to Classen and out, or over wherever they're wanting to go. That neighborhood, I'm not part of it. I'm not in any neighborhood. I'm on a corner by myself. So I'm not speaking for the neighborhoods, but I'm speaking for the area in general. It's been a long time coming that has been stabilized so that they feel somewhat safe to be there. Kindred Hospital is there. We've got churches in the area. We've got St. Luke's daycare on 14th Street. They've got an after-school program for at-risk teens, program in the arts. So there's a lot of stuff beyond the trees and the historical nature of that area, which I think needs to be considered as in terms of what's going to happen to that area if this transit system does eventually draw a lot of people, and I think that it will, a lot of people from the suburbs wanting to go to downtown area things, Bricktown, the ball games, the Thunder, etc. Why would they not want to park anywhere they can in all of these areas that are basically churches, hospitals, historical places, in order to take this train down, come back, and I don't know if I have heard that the plan is for it to run 24/7. If it is, we're talking about noise in the middle of the night, which is essentially a residential area. I've talked with a number of people in the area, and they're concerned. And I'm sure they eventually will show up at the committee and express whatever their particular things are. But a lot of time and effort and money has gone in to establishing that whole neighborhood, including East Heritage Hills, Mesta Park, Heritage Hills, into a really beautiful, irreplaceable neighborhood. So I'd like for it to be gung-ho business, but with some consideration for what is existing. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to encourage you to stay involved. We really appreciate you being here. The issue of whether or not to do transit is an issue that the City Council has decided, and we only are here to implement the plan that they have approved. So the decision of whether or not to do it has been made, but the route has not been approved, and it is still a matter of public discussion. And I would encourage you to come to the public transit meetings and come to this meeting as well. Anytime you have questions, you're always welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do think that people have not been very alerted. I mean, unless you have a real interest, you don't pay attention until a decision has been made, and then it's too late.
Sure.
So the business people I've talked with have said uniformly, oh, yeah, I heard about that, but I don't know much about it.
We'll take that into account and try to do a better job of communicating. We're holding public meetings and things, but we can do better, and we will.
Well, I appreciate it. And I do appreciate all of the work everyone's doing. You know, it's mind-boggling to walk in and really understand the complexity of everything. So
Sure.
I thank you for your
Well, thank you for being here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other comments from citizens? Well, there's no further business. Is there a motion to adjourn? Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye. We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.